Earl Walker Jackson Sr., also known as E.W. Jackson, is a Christian minister. He is a lawyer, and he is now the GOP candidate for lieutenant governor for the Commonwealth of Virginia. He also happens to be our next guest. E.W. Jackson, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a thrill for us to have you, and it's been so fun to watch your rise and the way you got the nomination. And you're such a fiery speaker. We've been really waiting to get to you. And in fact, it's your role as a speaker and as a pastor that I think became the big headline coming out of your nomination. You made some comments, of course, in your role as pastor of Exodus Faith Ministries that were captured on YouTube, and now we're getting played back. And I was hoping you could contextualize these things. You made a comparison again as your role as a pastor. You made the comparison of Planned Parenthood to the KKK, and you said some things about homosexuality, saying that people who were gay, I think, were sick, is the way you put it. I would love for you to clear these statements up and contextualize them so that I know you want to talk about jobs and the economy. So how do you address these?
Absolutely. Well, first, it should be said that nothing that I've ever said has been said in hatred or bigotry or anger or venom. You're right. I am a minister. I speak theologically about some of these issues and in theological context. On the comparison of Planned Parenthood to the KKK, I didn't say that Planned Parenthood was like the KKK. I said in terms of the destruction of black life. Now, it's just a statistical fact. 37% of the babies aborted are babies of black women, and black folks are only 11% of the population. And in most civil rights contexts where there is a disparate result, that is always a matter of suspicion. And given the history of Planned Parenthood, I just think it's something that ought to at least be looked at and talked about. That's just a statistical fact. And with regard to homosexuality, look, homosexuals are human beings, and the Bible requires that we love everybody, and I feel that way about every human being. I'm not interested in condemning or hurting anybody, but some of these activists, and this is the context in which I said that, when they go into churches, they desecrate the sacraments, they spit on priests coming out of ordination ceremonies, and they do things that are intended to shock and offend people. I do think that is sick. I don't think that belongs in a constitutional republic where we're supposed to be open to hearing a variety of ideas and perspectives on things. And those are the only points that I was really trying to make.
Listen, you're entitled to those opinions, and I can understand why, as a pastor, you would have those opinions. And I think many people listening to you might even agree with those opinions. But those opinions are causing heartburn for the gubernatorial candidate right now. And a lot of people are saying, well, I don't know, that seems a little out there for me. And you have to run in Northern Virginia, which is increasingly purple. How do you then, hold these positions? I mean, as I read it, you just doubled down on the things you'd said before. How do you hold those positions and then find some favor with the moderate voters that you have to get elected?
Well, if you go to church, if you live in a traditional family, the likelihood is that people in those circumstances, most of whom are voters, will understand perfectly what I'm saying. I think the important thing for them to know is that I don't say anything out of hatred or animosity or desire to hurt anyone. But look, I was in the Marine Corps. I'm not going to be talking about combat. I'm a minister, but I'm not going to be talking about theology. I'm going to be talking about jobs and the economy and how we can help Virginians to prosper in a very difficult situation, and how we can fight to make sure the federal government is not smothering the economy and smothering the creation of jobs in Virginia. So that's where we're going to go, and I hope that people will not see me as one-dimensional or just, he's a minister and that's all he is. I've been a businessman, an attorney. I've taught business and commercial law and regulatory law at the university level. So I hope people will look at the entire package.
Well, now you've been the nominee for 2 weeks now, or almost 2 weeks, coming up this weekend. Talk to me about what you're seeing out there on the campaign trail and what your strategy is going to be. As Brian put it, you're going to have to win statewide. What's your strategy to sort of strike that middle ground and get the votes that you need to be the next lieutenant governor?
Well, we intend to not only speak to heads, but to speak to hearts. I think that the founding principles upon which this nation was built were laid here in Virginia. I think those are unifying principles. I think they bring people together. I intend to reach out to the black community, to the Hispanic community, the Filipino community, Asian community, Indian community, as well as the evangelicals who are often been disgusted and felt like they didn't have anyone of conviction representing their concerns, and the feeling, frankly, by many people of faith, not just Christians, but many people of faith, that they're often persecuted if they simply try to hold faithfully to their theological views. So I think there is a group of people out there waiting for real leadership that is not apologetic about who you are, but also is willing to help people connect the dots in terms of why conservative principles will help them have a better life for themselves and their families and their children coming after them.
So, I think in this whole process where you became the lieutenant governor candidate, the convention process in the Commonwealth of Virginia, a lot of people walked away and said, E.W. Jackson? I don't think I've ever heard of him. How did that all come to be?
Well, look, I ran for U.S. Senate. I didn't do very well in the primary, but what happened apparently was that I built a very strong following of people who believed in me and wanted to see me run again and urged me to do so. And I think those people showed up at the convention. Those people helped us run, I think, the best campaign, obviously, in the race. I mean, we were successful where others outspent us. And I think that, the groundwork was laid for that. And obviously, look, I'm connecting with people, and I think I'm going to be doing that on a much broader basis than just Republicans. As people get to really hear who I am and sense where my heart is, I think that people will find out I'm not what the mainstream media has unfortunately painted me to be over the last week.
And when you look across and we've only got about 30 seconds here, but when you look at the top of the ticket from the Democrats there, Terry McAuliffe, it's a pretty stark distinction between he and Ken Cuccinelli. If you can sum it up here, because one of the things you're going to be doing is being out there campaigning for Cuccinelli as well as yourself. What do you think the voters of Virginia are looking at here between these two candidates?
Terry McAuliffe thinks that government is the answer. We believe that individuals and freedom are the answers. That's what built this nation, and that's the direction in which we want to take Virginia, and we want Virginia to be a model for the rest of the country on where we need to go as opposed to where we've been going over the last 4.5 years.
You say we. Will you run as a pair, or are you free to run separately if you have differences?
Well, we'll end up doing both, obviously. I mean, look, we are in fundamental agreement. I've heard that this ticket is probably more homogeneous than almost any ticket ever in the history of Virginia. So there's no stark disagreement between us. There may be some nuances here and there, and I don't think we'll be afraid to express those. But we've got to run individually. As you know, each candidate gets elected in a sense on his own. So we'll be doing a little bit of both.
Well, right. Say this about E.W. Jackson. He answers questions that are asked of him, and we love that about any politician. We would love to have you on as the campaign goes on a regular basis. E.W. Jackson, thanks for joining us today.
For having me.